Thanks for joining us today. Here we are with another episode of What is the Truth for Twin Palms Entertainment. I'm your host, Joseph Allison, and let me introduce my guest today. We have Rob Craig, he's a San Diego firefighter. We have Steve Caldwell, who's the founder of ClarifyMedia.com, and we have Dirk Clinton, a real estate developer. Gentlemen, thanks for showing up today.
Good to be here. Thanks for having us.
So we're going to do an episode specifically about the carnivore diet, which is why, I know you guys from various walks of life, whether it be the gym or the beach or just knowing each other forever. And I know you guys have variable degrees, have some personal experience with the carnivore diet. So just thought it'd be cool if we all just kind of talk and introduce the audience to your ideas and our ideas about it. Something I've heard about a lot in the last year or two. I mean, I've heard a lot of different athletes talking about it. People in the gym, but I think there's a lot of questions that people don't know because it seems like a fairly extreme thing, So with that said, let's get to a first question, which would be to you, Dirk.
Sure.
How did you first hear about the carnivore diet, and how long ago was that?
Honestly, I don't remember a first time that I heard of the carnivore diet. It was really more of a progression. I was having some issues, some inflammatory issues generalized around my body.
Like where? Like
joints, really. The biggest part was my knees, my shoulders, and from my elbows to my fingertips.
Because I know you're a swimmer, right? And so you were really noticing that athletically or even outside of your athletic?
24 hours a day.
Oh, wow.
And then, at first the inflammation first started when I returned from China. That was maybe 37 years of age, about 14 years ago.
Okay.
And at that point, I had some bursitis in my hips, and I'd feel it, during my swims and whatnot, and then after my swims. And during long drives, it was very, very difficult just to get in and out of the vehicle.
Damn.
It was pretty crazy.
And so you don't know exactly when you first heard of carnivore. You don't know if it was a decade or 5 years or?
It may have been, maybe 10 years ago.
Okay.
Something like that.
10 years ago you heard about it.
I did.
How long would you say it took you to actually then consider undertaking it?
Well, to start, it was difficult. Just, there was an awareness, but once I had awareness, there was a rejection that it was just absolutely crazy. And there was just no part of me that was willing to go there.
Okay.
But I was eating the standard American diet at the time. I was 240 pounds at the time as well.
How much do you weigh now?
200.
So you've had a 40-pound shift in your weight.
I have.
Over a period of doing the carnivore diet for?
Well, it started about I was about 240 up until about 5 years ago. And then at that time, I started fasting.
Intermittent fasting?
No, actually full fasting.
Full fasting.
I would fast for up to 27 days. And I did multiple 22-day fasts. I did a 27-day fast. You lose about a pound a day. And then after each fast, I would go into a period of refeeding. And during each refeeding, I would try a different diet.
Interesting.
And so just over a period of time, I was eating less and less until such time about maybe a year and a half. It may have been even 2 years ago now. That at that point, I got to a point where I had eliminated so many things, so many dietary items. I just started eating basically meat, fish, and eggs and tallow.
Interesting. Good. Steve, how about yourself? When did you first hear of carnivore diet, and how long ago was that?
Joseph. So I had been following the keto space for several years, and certain individuals who are well known in that space just started to talk more about the carnivore diet.
Okay.
And I had just increasingly started to hear about it. A lot of the results that people were getting were anecdotal, and I had started to lose my steam at the end of my workday, and I was really struggling towards the end of the day. I sit in an office chair most of the day, and about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I was just spent. And I'm like, okay, I gotta get serious about some nutrition here. And so it had been percolating in there for a while.
Okay.
But then I started hearing about the lion diet, which was more extreme. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna try this, what they call an elimination diet.
Okay.
And I'm just gonna go baseline.
How long ago did you first try it?
This was 6 months ago.
Okay, 6 months
Yeah.
ago. So up until 6 months ago, you had heard of things, but weren't necessarily doing any. Were you,
Right.
Okay.
Right. It was just the volume of success that people were having on it that I could see online was just growing. So I'm like, okay, I'll give it a shot.
It influenced you, and
Yeah.
6 months ago you ventured in.
Yes.
Okay. Rob, how about you? When's the first time you heard of carnivore diet or anything the derivative of? And how long ago was that?
I first heard about it from some guys at work that were doing it about 5 years ago.
Some firefighter friends of yours?
Yes.
Okay.
And I did it for about 6 weeks and just realized that for me and my work and how things are with meal times at work, that it wasn't sustainable for me.
Due to your work environment.
Right.
Yeah.
And it would take too much prep for me to have maybe a knowledge that I might be at work for 4 days in a row.
Yeah, an incredible amount of meal prep
Yeah.
in your particular case probably kept you from really going too deep, super deep with it.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. How long did you do it for when you did do it?
About 6 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah. And I did like it, but a lot of times, depending on where I'm working in the city of San Diego, I can't get the meat that I want from the source I want.
Sure.
Like I can't get a grass-fed organic steak at every market.
You would literally need to prep just to an incredible degree
Yes.
to be committed to the project.
Yes.
And Steve, how long did you do it for when you did it for?
I went, complete elimination for 2 months, like ruminant meat only.
Could you tell me what ruminant meat is?
Sure, and this is not the technical definition, but it's animals that have sort of multiple digestive tracts or multiple stomachs, where they're able to, take the nutrients from whatever they're eating, and then convert those into, nutrients in the end product or the end meat, and that would be bison, beef, cow, lamb, mutton, just those kinds of animal
I've heard a
sources.
lot about
Yeah.
that as being the highest source because of what they do to, in a sense, clean it out for us.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Yeah.
Dirk, how about yourself? How long have you done it for?
It's been about 2 years, I'd say, a year and a half to 2 years or so.
And from what I know about you, those year and a half to 2 years, you've been the strictest person I know that's actually been doing it, which all respect to discipline. Yeah, that's amazing. First of all,
So, yeah, I'll just give
that's
you.
amazing.
Essentially, my body tells me with precision the degree to which I'm eating whatever it needs so that I'm not inflamed, right? So I have attempted about maybe 4 months ago or so, I attempted to bring back dairy, for instance, milk, cheese, etc.
I like how you say attempted.
It didn't work, and I love
Using
dairy.
your body as a lab rat, in a sense, right?
Absolutely,
Listening to your body, as I know you do. We've talked quite a
Sure.
bit about this.
Sure.
You thought to introduce milk. Tell me if I'm wrong. You thought to introduce milk products, and it was just reject.
Well, it happens over a period of days or maybe a couple weeks where my body starts, there's just little things in my, just pain here and there, and I just know it's not working.
Okay.
So I eliminated that again.
For how long
maybe-
did you shove
I went
in?
maybe 2 months, I'm guessing. Then
Oh.
I went back onto dairy.
For 2 months?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so then.
What did
I
you
was having
use of dairy during that time?
Essentially whole milk, grass-fed whole milk, minimally homogenized.
Like a glass a day?
It's never a glass a day. It's whatever I do. It's more of whatever that is.
Half-
And so
half-
probably I'm guessing maybe 3 to 4
Glasses a day.
glasses. Yeah,
Okay.
which might be upwards of eight
Okay,
cups. Something
okay,
like
okay.
that. And
Was there any yogurt involved?
yeah, there was yogurt, grass-fed yogurt, very high quality Strauss yogurt.
Okay.
European. There's a European model. It's just
Prime,
so good.
prime time.
Really
Top
good stuff.
stuff.
Yeah.
Any cheeses?
And a little bit of cheese, maybe some feta.
Feta. Right.
That's
I hear a lot
essentially-
about feta with this diet. Yeah.
Yeah.
No
I'm s-
American processed cheeses, none of that heavy
No, no,
Swiss
no,
and all that, none of that. When
No.
people say cheese with this diet, I inevitably find that they're saying either feta generally, but even maybe what's that Mexican crumbly cheese?
Cotija?
Cotija. I hear a lot about cotija as well. But anyway,
Interesting.
so any other dairy? Like, was there butter?
I'm still on butter, and butter is not causing any issues whatsoever.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
butter stays throughout.
Butter stays. Yeah, I didn't
Interesting.
think of that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Was it harder initially, or did you acclimate? You know, like when you initially went off into this, it's a pretty extreme diet. You know.
I don't see it as such. Yeah.
I'm just saying, if we look out there in the world at what people eat,
Sure.
and do or don't consume on a daily
Okay,
basis,
I'm
the
with
average
you.
American.
Sure.
You don't, because you're hyper focused on this.
Yeah.
But the people, just
I'm
for
with you.
general, you know.
No,
yeah.
I agree with
so,
you.
So,
Yeah.
it didn't really seem to. Was there an acclimation phase?
There probably was. I don't even remember whether there was or not. All I know is that when we're so used to eating all these carbohydrates, there's a real craving there. I mean, it's a real drug. And so was I wanting sweet stuff? Absolutely. And really, you know, even just talking about it now, I'm thinking in terms of, you know, I was eating quite a bit of fruit, and when I'd eat a little fruit, the little became a lot.
Yeah.
So I was really in a situation where if I ate 2 oranges, it was really, you know, a dozen by the end of the half hour or whatever it took to eat them.
No, you're an eater like I am. I have a hard time with a little bit.
And I'm recalling now, it did cause problems, right? So that's that's a lot of sugar.
All that sugar, yeah.
It's a lot of sugar.
Yeah.
And so eliminating that, and you know, just hearing myself speak right now, up until about a month ago, I was doing about a pound of blueberries, right?
Ooh, yeah, I remember you telling me that. A pound of blueberries.
It's not as much as you think,
right?
right?
No, especially
Yeah, it's
but
not
it's
a
still,
whole
it's
lot.
a lot of sugar.
It's enough, exactly. So I took that away, and I feel much better.
Much better.
Much better.
Steve, how about you? Did you have an acclimation phase? How was it when you dove in?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I wanted to go back to baseline. I'm like reset, and I went full elimination for 2 months, and you know, initially, like, I'm not feeling great, but after about a week, I really started to feel, a few days, started to really feel a surge in energy. And my skin, you know, after a month was starting to clear up. I had some psoriasis. You know, brain fog was like a lot lower. Like I just started to see these things happen. Now I don't want to exaggerate this. Okay,
Sure.
These were gradual things that I was tuned into and paying attention to. And the biggest thing was, like, I just wasn't getting, after 2 months of this, I was not getting this crash towards the end of the day. Now I drink a couple cups of coffee in the morning. That's a contributing factor. I generally will stop the coffee before noon. No caffeine after noon.
Do you crash on the coffee?
No.
So you don't have a big peak in a valley?
No, because I'm so used to it.
Okay.
But and then I lost probably, you know, I probably lost 6 pounds that first 3 weeks.
Okay, a couple pounds a week.
Yeah, and I noticed that I started to retain my muscle mass a little bit more. The biggest challenge when you're in the gym, I don't know, 3-4 days a week, the hardest part is getting enough protein to maintain whatever muscle mass you can. So, you know, this is such a satiating diet. You can only eat so much beef and meat in a day. Like, I mean, you know, if they say you need a gram to 2 grams of protein per pound of body weight, like I just can't take in that much meat.
Yeah,
So at any rate, there is an acclimation process till your body's more fat adapted versus glucose or carbohydrate adapted to Dirk's point. You know, you're going to go through a transition. There's no doubt about it. And not every day is going to be, you know, roses and sunlight. So.
Sure. Okay. Rob, I know you did the diet for the least probably of everyone on the panel. But yourself, when you tried it, did you notice anything in terms of like acclimating, or was it hard initially?
I noticed I, due to the fact I was not eating the amount of carbohydrates that I normally ate, I noticed I was hungrier more because of the protein intake.
Initially?
Yes.
Did that fade over the 6-week period that you did it?
I'd say a little bit.
You felt less hungry for carbs, more fulfilled.
Yes. And I think your body gets used to not having the carbs but it takes time.
It's a bit, there's an acclimation process.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see how that would be the case. Let me ask you this. When you were doing the diet, what did you specifically eat? Let's just say for your first meal of the day.
I would eat eggs.
Whole eggs?
Yeah, like just 3
How many?
fried eggs.
3 fried eggs?
Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe some bacon.
Little bacon and
Depending
eggs
on what
in
I
the morning.
had, what protein I had
Okay.
on hand.
That was your breakfast, bacon
Yeah,
and eggs?
yeah.
Okay. Steve?
So I'm gonna probably have my first meal around 11
Okay.
in the morning. So
You start the day with coffee, is that right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. There is an intermittent fasting period there, and then it's usually going to be, well, at that time it was ground beef or a steak. Now I've transitioned more to what they call keto-vor, if you will. And so today it's 4 eggs in the morning and I'll or 2 eggs and a slice of salmon, and I'll throw some olives in there and maybe a little feta or goat cheese and
God,
we get
that sounds
a
good
nice
to
little
me.
protein bowl. Yeah.
That sounds really good to
Yeah.
me. As far as just like a man with a morning hunger, that sounds very fulfilling.
Yeah.
I have
Definitely.
Mediterranean blood in my background, so the olives kind of touch a special place for me. It sounds really good.
Yeah.
Dirk, how about yourself for the first meal of the day?
Pound of ground beef, essentially, and a little bit of salsa
Okay.
and some avocado.
And what kind of ground beef?
Grass-fed ground beef.
Okay. And you get that where?
Sprouts.
Okay. Little plug for Sprouts. Sprouts, remember that.
There
Anyway,
you Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, it's interesting to me, like, what are we taking in? So let's even go to the next meal of the day. Let's go back to Dirk. What would be, I know you do 2 meals a day, is that correct?
2 meals a day.
I feel like
Yeah.
that's a continuous thing I see with this diet is people aren't doing 3 meals, they're doing 2. So on the second meal, what would that be?
So I'll go back to the first meal. So I cook in tallow, and I don't use a ton of tallow, but enough to
Tell
just.
the audience what tallow is.
Tallow is visceral fat, as I understand, from ruminant animals. So basically the fat from the internal organs. Yeah.
Wow. Very specific fat source. And then,
It
okay,
is.
so
It
that's
is, and
what
high
you,
quality.
that's what you cook your ground
My
beef
ground
in.
beef in. Exactly.
Now we're going to the second meal.
Exactly. So the second meal.
Your first meal is at what time of day?
When I wake up, so probably around 7 a.m.
7
something like
a.m.
that,
you eat
yeah.
the beef
I eat the beef, exactly.
with the tallow.
Yep, yep.
And then you have your second meal when?
Anywhere between, say, 7 p.m. and 10 p.m., something like that, whenever I get home.
You have your first meal around 7 or 8 a.m.
I do.
and you have your next meal literally 12 hours later
And I'm
or
never hungry.
14 hours later, and all day long you're even. You've been doing this for almost 2 years and you feel even, and it's what a testimonial for.
Oh, I feel
that's
great.
amazing.
Absolutely.
All day
With
long you take in nothing.
Zero hunger.
How about water?
Yeah, I do drink some water.
So that's what enters your mouth for that next 12 to 14 hours is water.
Nothing else.
Amazing. And what would that meal be at the end of the day?
So I purchased from Costco cod and wild caught Alaskan cod, and I will have a pound of that with 6 eggs, pasture raised eggs, cooked in butter, and I put some spices on top, and it's amazing.
Incredible. Steve?
Yeah, so I'll some days I'm 2 meals, some days I'll go 3. Just
Okay.
depends on my gym workout
Sure.
schedule, because the days after I work out I'm just more hungry. I got to get more in.
Would you feel that it's the days that you don't work out is a 2 meal day, but if you had the workout in, you probably want a 3rd meal?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to get enough protein
Sure.
in. And so I don't know. Middle of the day, late afternoon, I'll have like an arugula salad. I'll get a can of tuna or a couple cans of tuna, throw them in there. Some feta cheese, avocado, and I'll just kind of make this nice salad, Mediterranean style.
Nice.
That would be like my second meal on certain days.
Okay.
And then like the last meal would just be like flat out protein, a steak, like a slab of fish. Occasionally I'll do chicken, although I'm not a big fan. I've lost interest in chicken.
We are in an outdoor environment, so we will survive the occasional military helicopter and even a train or a passerby. But
Yes.
if you put up with this, I think it's worth it because look at this beautiful environment we're in. We did take a chance to do an outdoor shoot, so there's pros and cons to it, but I love every bit of it. I hope
Yeah.
you guys do too. Now that the helicopter has passed, Rob, what about your second, when you were doing it, you do 2 meals or 3 meals a day?
I would do 3.
Okay.
Uh,
What were your meals like the second and third?
so it would either be chicken or steak, and then same thing with dinner.
Okay.
And then I would try to do, because I would try to mix in greens too, like a salad with avocado and then oil and vinegar.
Nice.
So I would do that, and then
And then as you've switched off that, because I know that you're saying, especially due to your work, that it was
Yeah.
really difficult for you to stick with something like that due to the meal prep and everything it took
Right.
to make it happen. So where did you go to after that, after experiencing that and what that felt like? Where did you exist now with your daily intake, and where's your head at?
well, the reason why I was able to do it at that particular station is because everyone cooked on their own. At a normal firehouse environment, 1-2 people cook for the whole crew.
Oh man.
So
Yeah.
I went to basically now I'm at whatever they're making, and if they don't
Yeah.
if I don't like what they're making, I'll find out about it and make my own
Okay.
or make a protein shake and
Okay.
say, hey, I'm not eating.
Yeah, I'm not eating what you're fixing,
Right.
mister.
Or I'll offer to cook, and I'll say, hey, how about I cook today?
Yeah, yeah.
You know.
And they're like, oh God. No.
No.
No, that sounds really, I mean, it's a lifestyle situation, you know. I would say to Steve, have you noticed any positive or negative health benefits or side effects, pro or con, based on the intake?
Yeah, for me, like it was all about I need more energy. Like I'm 54, like right middle age, you're not putting in as many hours as you did when you were 34. And so, in order to be productive for me, like I want those hours to be as productive as I possibly can. So like I just needed to find that boost at the end of the day to kind of push through and get some, be more productive versus the crash. So for me, it was all about, look, I got to reset and find more energy in my day, my average work day. And the results have been absolutely noticeable. I mean, again, more energy towards the end of the day, more sustained energy throughout the day, clearer skin, less brain fog, better focus. I mean, these things, we hear about them, they're anecdotal for a lot of people, but I can absolutely say, for me, that's been the experience. And then after the elimination diet, then I just started to layer in things, similar to how Dirk started to layer in dairy. I just started to layer stuff in to see how I feel. But it's just a good feeling to start at that baseline again.
That's awesome. I really get a picture here of more sustained energy, more even sustained, not as many peaks and valleys, much more energy at the end of the day or the halfway through, and you might feel like crash normally. Also a lot of other health benefits you mentioned. Dirk, how about you?
Yeah, just even energy.
Even
basically,
energy.
throughout the day, absolutely. So I wake up and I have coffee with Laird Hamilton's coffee creamer.
Laird, we're plugging you.
And bought from Costco.
Cool.
And the period of time, once I've had that pound of ground beef, the period of time that it takes, to get to that second meal, I have no fluctuations in the energy.
It's incredible. I mean,
None.
that's like a
Yeah.
straight out testimonial to the American, if not global public, about a way to eat that'll actually sustain energy, when I don't think most people are feeling that on the diets that we've been sold on as kids, or the traditional food groups or whatever we were sold on, or whether they were selling us or not. That's just what our parents were fixing us, So
but furthermore, the visceral fat that I had experienced for years without fasting now, that visceral fat is essentially it's essentially gone, right? And so just having clear skin, having almost no visceral fat whatsoever, it's
amazing.
wonderful.
That's
it is
amazing. That's just we've mentioned to you the weight difference. You said you experienced, literally, not exactly because of this, but over a period of your life, to do with this to some degree, a 40-pound difference in your weight. Is that
It
fair
is.
to say, from 240 to 200?
240 to 200.
And
it is.
you're how
It is.
tall?
6'4".
6'4", 200. That's a lean. I know you're a swimmer. That's prime time. Steve, how about yourself? Has there been a shift at all?
I've been pretty steady. I mean, I'll fluctuate 5 pounds in a 24-hour period. Just depends
Sure.
where I'm at. But yeah, I mean, like the big takeaway for me is before this whole experience, I was not getting near enough protein.
Okay.
Not near enough. So, I just want to maintain as much lean muscle mass as I can, and obviously keep the visceral fat to a minimum. I wish I had this guy's physique, and then just like I'm not. It's simplified things dramatically. I don't have to overthink what I'm going to eat. It's much simpler when you go to the market.
Yeah.
It's just like
You're
you hit
picking
the
up a
two ends of
handful
the
of
market, you pretty much ignore the middle of the market.
Which is all the carbs and the chips and the crackers and the processed foods.
Exactly.
Everything's in the middle, but on the extremes, we got the living foods over here and the meat over here.
That's it. That's it.
And Rob, I know you didn't do it for that long. I keep saying that, but was there a weight? Did you feel like you noticed even in the 6-week period that you did it? Was there a weight shift?
No, my weight hovers between about 204 to 210.
Okay. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I also lift weights and do jiu-jitsu.
Right.
So
You're burning a lot.
yeah. So, but I mean, my weight doesn't fluctuate that much. I would like to be about 195, and
Okay.
I have dropped that much weight before for a tournament.
Okay.
I went down to 188.
Do the tournaments come by weight or no?
Weight, belt, and
It's weight, belt, and
and
age.
age. Uh-huh.
Oh wow. Okay, so you wanted to come down to train to compete at a different weight level.
yeah. So basically, when I dropped the 12 pounds, I was eating like a whitefish and asparagus at night,
Okay.
and then really lowered any alcohol intake. But for me, I think I did it too quick.
Yeah, you went kind of cold turkey style,
Yeah, and
like a
'cause I did it-
wrestler trying to make weight.
Yeah, I did
Yeah.
it like in 2 weeks.
So you felt the energy loss.
Oh, it was horrible.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and so I decided if I'm going to do another tournament, I'm going to fight at my current weight.
Stay at what's comfortable.
Right.
Yeah.
Because as soon as I started the tournament, I gassed.
You gassed out. Yeah. Did you notice any effects to your mood or your mental state?
I did when I wasn't able to eat because I mean that happens I think with anyone.
Sure.
You know, like if you're on an extended call at the fire station, you don't get to eat right away. Your mood is definitely affected.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So
Did you notice it more or less? Did you acclimate with that, or did it just kind of stay that way during the time you did it?
you know, I mean my I think it all has to do with
Your lifestyle.
yeah, and my
Yeah.
schedule and how it's never the same.
It's different. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're in a different club when it
Yeah.
comes to having to do something like this.
Yeah.
I feel like, Steve, what you mentioned to me is a real evenness. That would be true both physically, mentally, and emotionally. Like you just feel like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
Yeah. I think it's well established that too much sugar, too much glucose in your system, right? You're going to have these ups and downs, and if you're taking more protein, you're taking more fat. You're just going to digest that stuff a lot slower, and you're going to have this much more even metabolism.
Yeah.
And I think getting to metabolic health, it's well established at this point the U.S. population is metabolically unhealthy. The vast majority of people are on some sort of pathway to some sort of pre-diabetes or diabetes, and the big motivator for me was to try to get to a degree of metabolic health for the long term, and the science seems to be pointing towards a lower carb lifestyle.
I do believe that seems to be the takeaway, for sure. Some data that I heard of, it's been a long time since I heard this data. I wouldn't really want to be quoted on it as a scientist or anything, but I think it strikes a pose along these lines. Is I believe it was the year 1900, the average American's annual consumption of sugar was 3 pounds a year, whereupon at that time diabetes was virtually unknown. Whereas 100 years later, in the year 2000, the average annual American's consumption of sugar was above 75 pounds. That
Wow.
difference is a sociological experiment that we did to each other as humans, where we averagely took in 3 pounds a year and went to 75 pounds a year. During that same time, we created all this heart disease, we created diabetes, we created all this stuff based on the idea that was sold on us, that we bought into by way of our parents, because they didn't really know. It's not their fault. It was just every generation did its thing and thought they did what was right or whatever. Same thing with chemicals in our foods. Prior to the year prior to the Industrial Revolution, we didn't really have chemicals in our foods. We ate fresh because there wasn't any other choice. There wasn't stuff that sat on a shelf for 6 years. So, I mean, with the introduction of all these things on a label that you can't even read unless you are a scientist, you don't even know what they are, but you know they're a bunch of weird chemicals. We've introduced that. Now we've created cancer at a time there wasn't cancer before that. So it's probably a good wake-up call for us all to realize, you know, the old saying, you are what you eat, and or drink. So, I mean, Dirk, I think you're a great example of everyone on this panel. You've been doing this the longest. You've been doing it very disciplined. You look great. You feel great. You're even.
Absolutely,
I mean, you're a testimony of just the way you're living, you know? Like, I've been talking with you about this through and through. In fact, it was by talking with you that inspired me to do this very episode.
Oh,
so,
super cool.
Super cool to have you here and talk more about it. How would you say, you know, I know you're a swimmer. I'm not saying that's all you are, because I'm sure you're much more than a swimmer, but from what I do know, you are a swimmer.
Outside of the pool.
Outside of the pool. Would you say that this diet in some way has affected you athletically? Do you notice you're swimming longer, fast? You know, is there any notice? We've talked about your even energy. How about athletically?
I'd say there's benefit to the feeling of lean. I love to feel lean. You know, I carried around a lot of weight for a lot of years, probably the better part of 10 years. I was, say, 20% heavier than I am now, maybe 40 pounds or so. And I just feel so much better. I mean, how you move through the water, how you walk, the stress on your knees and your legs, etc. It's a whole different way of life. I'm never going back.
You're never going back. So this is not only is this sustainable, this is now what you perceive to be your lifestyle. That's where you're at.
Well,
that's what you're going to eat for the rest of your life.
I'm committed to doing what makes me feel good and helps me just intuitively know that I'm doing the right thing. So am I committed to doing a pound of ground beef and tallow and a pound of fish with 6 eggs? I'm not committed to that. I'm open. I'm open to whatever makes me feel good. But
to how it evolves, you know,
absolutely.
month to month. But
yeah.
I would think it's fair to say, by what I surmise from our discussion here, is that it's probably not anytime soon that you're going to go back to that lifestyle that you had, say, 5 years ago, when there was a lot more carbs and sugars and types of things like that in your diet. Is that fair to say?
Well, yeah. Well, essentially, yes, absolutely. I have a framework that I didn't have before. I never thought in terms of protein on one side and fat and carbs on the other. And I had no framework for shooting for 200 grams, you know, if my ideal body weight is 200 pounds.
Let's talk about that for a second.
Sure.
There's a lot of talk about the amount of grams of protein by your body weight. So
Sure.
do you buy into the idea of 1 gram per day to match your body weight? So if you weigh 200, which you say you do, then you would try to take in 200 grams of protein a day. Is that fair?
I didn't buy into anything per se. That was a goal based on what I had learned. I didn't know if I believed it or not. All I know now is that that's what I'm doing, and it works amazingly well.
I know you go by feel.
I do go by.
Your big thing is you go by feel, and I think that's great. So you felt your way into a 200-ish gram a day diet because it feels right. It wasn't a scientist that told you that. It wasn't any sort of paradigm. It was just you finding your way there.
Yeah, so I know what to focus on, and I know what to avoid, right?
Yeah.
So I'm focusing on protein, and naturally I'm getting the fat, and I'm taking in some coconut powder, you know, for the carbohydrates, and that's working beautifully.
Coconut powder?
Through Laird Hamilton's coffee creamer.
Yes. Okay. No, yeah,
So,
I get that's the source of that. It's the coconut.
It's almost a dessert, you know, in my coffee. It tastes good.
From what I hear, a lot of people like those products. He's virtually killing it, but he's done a really good thing with creating these foods.
Yeah, it's good.
I've heard a lot about it.
Yeah, but then, so that's what I'm focused on, but what I'm focused on avoiding is seed oil,
Okay.
sugar, grains, dairy, and alcohol. Easy. Having this framework,
is there vegetables in there? Do you consume vegetables? Because I didn't hear those mixed in with what you're not having.
Okay, so this hits on another topic. So I believe that the body is built for efficiency, right? So if the body is built for efficiency, if we've been modern humans, let's just say, We've been modern humans for about 200,000 years. 200,000 years, as I understand, equates to around 7,000 generations. I don't believe for a moment that we were, for these 200,000 years, 7,000 generations, that we were worried about micronutrients, trying to forage and get exactly what we think our bodies need. We weren't thinking about this.
No.
We were thinking about how do we most efficiently get the nutrition and the energy, so the building blocks through protein, the energy through fat and carbohydrates that we need in order to allow our body to not only survive, but thrive and minimize disease, right? So if that is the case, which we can buy into or not, I do now, maybe a few years ago I didn't, there's no reason to take in industrial seed oils. There's no reason to take in grains. I think there are healthy grains, to be honest. I think there's healthy vegetables. But for me, if this is working and it's extremely efficient, it's easy to cook, it's easy to find the food, it's easy to shop. I don't even see the middle aisles in the grocery store anymore, right?
Yeah, talk about the middle aisle. I like it. Or the
Right.
middle aisles. Yeah, no, that's
Exactly.
great.
So,
yeah.
So if I feel like this is the most efficient pathway to sustained health, minimize disease, why do I want to go down the road of trying to get all the micronutrients and build the big salads? I don't feel the need. I don't think there's anything wrong, honestly, with the vegetable paradigm. But keep in mind, there are very few vegetables that we can actually consume, right? And those vegetables, most of them have glyphosate, right? So when we're eating a carnivore or mostly meat diet, when we're eating clean meat and fish and eggs, all my eggs are pasture raised, organic. If that's the case, we're avoiding all the glyphosate, we're avoiding all the pesticides. It's a natural means to eliminate that whole paradigm of pesticides.
Plus, we let their livers do the work, right?
We do, in fact.
We let their kidneys and liver do the work.
Absolutely. Four-chambered stomachs will do a much better job than our one.
And then we get the end result of that, which is highly refined nutrients for our bodies, using the animals as kind of our filter system. It's been talked to by some really intelligent people that I think are, and they've talked a lot about that. It's kind of new to me when I first heard about it. I was like, wow, whoa, okay. Just the idea, a lot of people think, oh my God, vegetables and fruits and all these things, but grains, what do you mean? But so that's what I mean, like it is considered pretty extreme by the normal paradigm of outlook,
Just on that note real quick, Joseph, I read recently that there are something like 30,000 additives and preservatives permitted in US food. God. Tens of thousands, okay, that are legal. In Europe, it's less than 500. So to your point, Dirk, there certainly are healthy grains. Like, I don't think anyone here is questioning that grains can be part of a balanced diet. It's all about the quality of it, and then how manipulated is it genetically, and then of course how is it grown? What's the soil? Like, what's the environment that the food is grown in?
Sure.
Unfortunately, our food is increasingly lacking in those core nutrients, and so what you get from an animal-based diet is you get this very concentrated set of full nutrients in one source.
Yeah.
And you just don't have to figure out all this other complication around what's in the food, what's not in the food. So
how about you athletically, like having with this diet? Have you noticed your gym time being more or less, or how has it affected you athletically?
Yeah, for me the biggest thing is I just noticed, and I need to say that I am supplementing with creatine. So I am maintaining my lean muscle mass. I'm not that muscular obviously, but I am maintaining my lean muscle mass better on this diet.
Okay.
There's no question about it.
How about your performance? So that's, in a sense, your musculature, but how about your performance?
My workouts are running anywhere between an hour and a half and sometimes 2 hours, and I'm trying to get a stretch in because that's important. You got to stay limber, trying to get some cardio in, and trying to lift weights. So I'm consistently getting all those things in, and I'm just more motivated. I think it's the whole idea of just taking more control of your health. And that's just motivating. And when you start to see the results, whether it's more energy or better lean muscle mass, it motivates you even more. So
Yeah,
I feel more motivated. That's it.
Okay, so there's a lot of more of the mental, energetic motivation.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a big shift in terms of how you felt physically or how you looked physically. Like, there wasn't a big shift of like, dude, whoa, you're all ripped now, or oh, you're bigger now, or you're less big now, or you're breaking personal records, or maybe there wasn't a big.
No.
I don't want to speak for you, but
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not running marathons or doing that. I did that when I was younger.
But you could if you wanted to.
Sure, absolutely. Absolutely, I probably should.
yeah.
But I get through my workouts. Like I don't burn out after an hour. Like I can go a solid 2 hours and I'm going to get this done.
Did you notice that as a shift prior to how you were kind of having peaks and valleys before?
Good.
So your workouts are better now.
Good question. Yes, I can't say that it was physiological. Physiologically, I'm now able to maintain a 2-hour workout or longer. It's just as much mental motivation.
Okay. Motivation is huge.
Yeah,
I mean, motivation is huge.
So I think it's probably a combination.
Little combination.
Yeah.
And Rob, when you were doing the diet and you were doing your training, because I know you're very into jiu-jitsu, from what I understand, from what I know about you.
Yeah.
And I know you're a surfer, and I know you're also into strength training.
Yes.
Which would be a lot of I know there was a period where you're doing CrossFit, but now, and I know you lift.
Yes.
Okay. Would you say that you noticed in the time you did it any sort of effect on your athleticism?
I mean, with my workouts and my schedule and the timing, it has to do with so many different things.
It's a lot of variables.
Of how much sleep I got at work, how little sleep I got at work,
Yeah.
what I ate, what time I ate, and that all wraps into how my performance is and lifting, how my nutrition is, if I'm able to, get my rest, get my nutrition in, and it varies all the time. So it's hard to put a thumb on it.
Well, a lot to be said and respected for the firemen in our world, just because how much personal sacrifice you guys do, even when it's not the heaviest days of work. Right now, there's so many fires, but I mean, even on a general basis, maybe a lot of us don't always hear enough about the kind of personal sacrifice that it is to be a fireman. So
Big
just
time.
want to say I appreciate the work you do.
Big time.
Honestly,
100%.
keep us safe and
Absolutely.
protected. Do you or ever have you done any sort of blood work in association with, do you do blood work at all?
Yeah, I do. I get my blood taken once a quarter with my private doctor, and then once a year for work.
Taken for?
They check liver enzymes.
Oh, for a test?
Yes.
You get your blood tested?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Cholesterol.
During that time, did you notice any spikes or valleys or anything?
The one time I was on a keto diet, when I had my work test and my urine tested, they think you're diabetic because the ketones are in your urine.
A lot, yeah.
And I said, oh no, I've been taking
doing this thing,
this keto thing.
And they're probably like, well, get off it.
Yeah.
Steve, how about you in that same question, along with the lines of blood work?
That's a good question. So, I've been doing blood work once a year. I probably at some point will ramp it up to a couple times a year.
Okay.
And again, there's people who do it a lot more frequently. What's clear, and I know my LDL is probably off the scale, and I'm okay with it right now from the standpoint that there is increasingly scientific study around this idea of a correlation between LDL cholesterol and heart disease.
Okay.
And that correlation has been, sort of pounded into our collective mindset for generations now. And I understand that there may be a risk there, and most physicians are probably going to say, hey, you're on this animal diet, you're in danger of heart disease. And so I look forward to the research as that starts to, materialize and evolve over the next few years. But I'm more interested in sort of my HDL triglyceride ratio and not so much my LDL. No right or wrong here. I'm just looking at where some of this science is going around cholesterol. So I am following that, and I did have a coronary calcium test, which came out 0, which gave me a little more confidence. But
Sure.
I know there's probably more tests that I should probably check out.
There's other tests, yeah, and I have to say, you talked to me about your coronary calcium test in the gym, which motivated me, and I went and did it, and I had the row of zeros too, which made me super stoked. So I want to thank you again for hipping me to that.
You bet, man.
That was quite a day on my drive back there to see what it was. I was wondering, what it would be like, because the doctor who I did it with, I asked him before when we were doing the test and almost after it, I'm like, what do you think, Chief? Like, think I'm good? And he's like, can't really tell, Joseph. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he goes, it's the weirdest thing. There's so many factors. We just don't know. He goes, I had a very overweight man come in, couldn't even fit in the tube to take the test, but I got him in there somehow, shoved him in, and he had like a row of zeros, and I was just blown away. And then this other guy came in that was like a marathoner, and he doesn't have a pizza in 20 years, doesn't drink, just like that kind of guy. And he had his numbers were up 600 to 1,000. He went straight for he went straight into heart surgery. And I was like, wow. He goes, you can't tell.
Amazing.
And so then I'm like, when can I get my results? He says that next week. I go, no,
Yeah.
I need them today. So he came back, he got them for me, I had a row of zeros. I was really stoked. But it does let us know there's a lot of variables, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of
Oh, yeah.
variables. So
Yeah.
I would say it's just always interesting to hear different points of view. And I would ask you, Dirk, how do you feel about what you've done with your diet, and do you research blood work at all?
Yeah, my belief system resides outside of our current medical paradigm, but I respect Rob and Steve, what you guys have done in terms of your testing, especially what is it called, a CAC score or calcium score? I am opening myself slowly to the possibility of getting that calcium score, but outside of that, getting the blood work, I don't see the need. In fact, it's more than not seeing a need. I don't want to put myself in a position where I soil that which I have achieved in terms of my feeling,
Yes.
in terms of what I'm intuiting is health for myself, by some number that happens to reside outside of the range.
Yes.
And so
In a sense, you're kind of a rebel to the idea of the range.
I am,
Yeah.
because I don't believe we know what the range actually should be.
Because the range, tell me if I'm wrong, but I believe in what you're thinking is
Sure.
that the range that they were taught, let's say the medical establishment that established those numbers in the first place, we're not sure. It's like, they used to think the earth was flat, and then they found out it wasn't, but before it was flat, they thought certain things. So that you'd be falling off the edge of the earth or whatever. But once we found out otherwise, everything changed. So we know with science that their ideas shift at one point. They learn different stuff. So maybe what the numbers that they have are associated with the mentality that they used to have. And this, in a sense, new paradigm is bringing forth just a whole different way of looking at it. So looking at it through those, it just kind of is like two different worlds. So I think what I know of you is you're saying, but Joseph, I go by feel, and I feel great, so they can all suck it.
Well, I honestly, the older I grow, the more I trust
How
my
old are you?
intuition. I'm 51 years of age.
51?
51.
Okay.
The older I get, the more I trust myself, and base how I'm conscious. I'm aware.
You live by
I'm
feel.
intuitive. I listen. I feel. And I feel as though most of us everyone's so involved in believing the science. And I'm not saying that
Yeah, you're not putting it down. You're just saying for you, you're going outside of that, living more by feel than by someone else's idea of numbers.
I am. And all I can say is it's working for me, first of all. And second, I don't fear death. I fear dis-ease most, right? And so I have experienced dis-ease, and now I'm outside of that state. And so I feel like if I'm moving in the right direction, why would I put myself in a position where I go back to a doctor that might say your LDL is very high, sir, you're this ratio or that. And the last time I was at the doctor's office was probably around a decade ago, and that was the experience.
Yeah.
Right. And I said I questioned this whole paradigm. I actually told him, he was a young doctor. He said, "You don't question this paradigm. This is what is." Right?
Yeah, yeah.
So it was enough of an experience in that 10-minute interaction with that doctor. I thought, you know what, I'm gonna plow my own field and see if it works for me, and it's honestly worked really well. And I don't think I have any reason to go back to that other paradigm, at
Good
least
for
at
you.
this time.
Well, it's inspiring. You look good. You say you feel great. Who can debate that? It's a personal
hear you.
decision.
Yep.
So let me get this straight. You're 51. You're 54, and you are
53.
50. I got the 50s club with
Yeah.
me, right?
I
You
like
know?
what he says too, because I take those blood work numbers with a grain of salt.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, I'll give you an example. So I had my blood work done, and they want you to fast for 12 hours, which
Sure.
I don't think is enough time.
Mm-hmm.
And one year, the night before, I had a ribeye, some starchy potatoes, and Haagen-Dazs ice cream. And then I had my blood work done the next day.
Okay.
Cholesterol through the roof, all these numbers. The next year, they're like, "Wow, what'd you do?" And I said, "Well, I didn't have a ribeye, and I didn't have ice cream, and I didn't eat potatoes last night." And
Yeah.
like, "Oh, that wouldn't affect it." I'm like,
What are you
"Oh,"
talking?
I'm like,
yeah,
"Okay."
it's so crazy,
Yeah, I'm
right?
like-
Yeah.
Well, and then another thing with at least with my work, where we go to what's called our wellness center, and you got some guy telling you that you're overweight, that's 40 pounds heavier than you,
Yeah.
and has about 10% higher body fat.
And all he's done is read books,
Yeah, and he's telling
Yeah.
me I'm overweight. I'm like,
You're
have you looked-
fired.
have you looked in the mirror, pal?
Well, it's funny because I went to the doctor, did some blood work, and my cholesterol was not above the number they like to see, but approaching it. And then I'm saying, okay, well, I asked them just because, that's why I do these shows. I like to ask questions. I don't purport to have the answers. The concept for what is the truth, the show that I do is, I don't have the answers, but I'm just a guy that likes to ask questions.
Yeah.
So I don't think that at the end I'm ever going to have the truth. I think the truth is subjective. But the idea that we could all find our own truth, talk about it, share it to an audience that hopefully is interested, and they're finding their own truth. So what is the truth isn't so much about do we find it, it's about the journey.
Sure.
And so as part of the journey, this is super fun. So back to the doctor, he sees my cholesterol level, like I said, was just approaching the line. And I asked him what he do. He goes, well, we're going to put you on statins. And I go, no, I'm not impressed. I told the guy, I'm just not impressed by that whole deal. Like, you're just going to pop a pill in me. You haven't even asked me one thing about my diet. Like, and he looks at me like, just baffled, as if diet wouldn't be something we would at least discuss before he pops a pill in me because he's some pusher that wants to make money because he's working for the big pharma. I mean, the whole program to me is highly suspect. I mean, the American medical establishment is highly suspect. I'll come out and say it. I don't care. It's my show. If you don't like it, turn it off. The bottom line is, we believe, tell me if I'm wrong, that we could affect our health by you are what you eat.
Yeah.
Okay, that's probably how we got here in the first place to talk about this, because we're individuals that somehow came in contact with each other and had discussions about that kind of thing. And I just thought it would be interesting enough to share it with others. Maybe they'd be stoked or whatever. And so how in different generations, like I'll just talk about different things we've gone through with evolution. Like, I mean, there's a whole sector of society that are vegan, the total opposite of a carnivore diet, and there's guys that'll just, they're all whatever works for you, bro. What's your
If it
truth?
works, absolutely.
Let's do this, whatever. There's the people that are the, the keto. Okay, there's another version of a diet that's fairly popular. What's the one is no gluten-free diet. Okay, I just feel like there's a lot of different stuff out there. I want to have conversations with all of them.
I think the common denominator, whatever works, there is no one size fits all, right? Everyone's got to find their own pathway here. But I think if we look for common ground, we can all agree that, ultra processed and processed food probably isn't the best thing you should be consuming. And I think also, I certainly don't want to disparage the medical profession, because look, if my kid breaks his arm and needs to get a splint or needs to have some surgery, like, I am so grateful for our medical professionals. And this guy, I'm sure, sees some pretty horrific things, and I've never been more grateful than when I go in and I need I need emergency or care.
100%,
But I think the challenge is how the medical profession educates their physicians and the overall inertia of decades of doing it a certain way. It just gets so ingrained that we lose our openness to a new way of approaching things that's more individual and not this one size fits all, let's put everyone on a statin, like you said, Joseph. So
I like the fact or the idea that we're all different, we're all going to create our own reality. There is respect for the medical establishment. Let me also state that I agree with you 100%. I exist somewhere between East and West. I listen to both. I listen to all sides as much as I can and try to make my own decisions based on what I feel. Go by feel. I'm definitely a go by feel guy. It's just interesting to me, all these extremes. I think, yes, we can all agree on that processed foods they don't have a place. Like, not,
look, when you look at, if you just look at the data and you look at, 13-year-olds with diabetes now, 100 years ago, that wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
And you just look at the rate of disease that's occurring in the country, and the metabolic disease, the obesity, the trajectory has not been good for 40 years. If you just look at society and the overall health of our population, something has to change. Something has to change.
I agree.
And it all starts with, as you said, you are what you eat. And look, we have to also acknowledge, healthy food is not accessible to all. It just isn't. And we need to make it more accessible, because look, if you're you're living in downtown LA or a major city, and you grow up in a socioeconomically challenged area, like, your access to fresh, healthy, organic food is just flat out limited.
Very limited.
And so you're starting. You're starting. A lot of these kids are starting life just. They're in an automatic setback. We have to get better as a society.
I agree with you on that.
Obesity is just like an epidemic.
Yeah, it's an epidemic. I mean, if you go to the center of the country, especially, I mean, I hear it a lot. People go to the Midwest, they just can't believe it. It's just not everyone, but high percentage. I mean, I think we could agree, reduce, if not eliminate, processed foods, but I think we could also agree, no matter what diet we're on, that we have a certain amount of protein needs. What the source comes from, we might differ, not necessarily us, but say, for instance, a vegan is probably going to think completely the opposite of a person approaching more of a carnivore stuff. That's just, where do they get their proteins?
Right.
I mean, I have this thing. You guys have probably all heard me say it, but I'll say it on the shows. I mean, look at a vegetarian animal. What is it always? Look at a giraffe. What is it always doing?
Eating.
It's always eating, because it has short chain energy in the food source. So it's always eating because it's short energy, quick energy, a lot of quick energy. Then let's just say, what is a lion doing? Hunts once or every 10 days or so, eats everything, and chills for another 7 days, doesn't have to eat, has sustainable power. Another way to look at it is, I don't know, but the only country that I know is actually traditionally, if not systemically vegetarian, would be India. I don't know of another one. They're actually vegetarians. I mean, they eat a lot of carbs and whatever, but they don't eat the cow. They said it's a sacred animal. But, not trying to be disrespectful to their culture, but have you ever seen the Indian Olympic team? That diet presents what it presents. I don't know. It's just whatever. So there's other factors with them. They probably don't have a lot of money given to their society for Olympic training centers. And it's not just all about the diet. But I mean, I think it's a little bit of a, okay, now let's just take a heavy meat eating society. Let's take how about the German Olympic team? We know they're big meat eaters, have been forever. Gaga. I mean, it's just, power block, Chinese, American, all the heavy meat eating countries. They have pretty intense Olympic teams. I don't know. I look at these things too as athletically, you know, I went through a period where I was a vegetarian in different phases, all the way through to a raw foodist at a period in time when I lived in Hawaii. And where I was at that time, you know, I weighed 160 pounds. I was super ripped, and I was just doing a lot. I was surfing and swimming and running and training every day. But I don't know. At one point I switched over and went back to eating red meat. I haven't had pork in almost in 47 years, but I don't believe in that. But I went back to the red meat, and my strength went through the roof instantly. Like I was breaking all my personal bests, and I've been on beef ever since because it just works for me. But also in terms of my genetics, my people and their people and their people's people have been eating meat for my whole historical DNA. Okay, so there's got to be something to that as well. I've looked into a little bit of like I have B positive blood type. I've recently been reading about that, and that's pretty interesting. That a lot of what it says about my blood type is how I naturally like to eat. So there's just all these different ways to look at it. I do look at it a lot through heredity and blood type, but also lifestyle. It's been explained to me that if you sit behind a desk all day compared to, like, say, my friend, in fact, Alex, worked at a surf camp all summer, that's a lot of physical output. There's a lot of difference between your protein needs. So we would talk about protein needs maybe a lot in terms of your output, you know? Like, is it a gram a day? And I'm not saying any one of us know the answer, but it's at least back to the idea of what is the truth, you know? Questions. Do we have an idea of a gram a day if you're fairly active per pound of body weight? But what if you're extremely active? Would that increase to maybe 1.5 to 2 grams a day? Because at what point is it too much protein for our system to process and then bad for us in that way? That would be a question I would propose to you, Dirk.
I have no idea.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, there's lots of information circulating out there, but, you know, some of the stuff that I've read that, you know, we can process a fairly substantial amount of protein in a single sitting, 40, 50 grams, although that, I understand it makes the kidneys work harder. But if you're doing that kind of activity where you're a competitive athlete, you're going to need carbs, period. You're going to need glucose, and a lot more than the average person who's not you know as athletic or looking for, you know, top performance in cardiovascular kinds of activities. So like it just goes back to the one thing: there's no one size fits all. And you know, kids, they need carbohydrates, right? They just need healthy, whole grain, you know, whole food, carbohydrates, right? They don't need
all the sugars and the carbs. And
right, they don't need the big gulp from 7-Eleven, right?
I mean, I like to, you know, as a trainer, I ask this question a lot of people who come to talk to me. It's like, well, what is strength? It's something different for everybody. It's just like, what is diet? It's something different for everybody. So one guy's a marathon runner. The idea for strength for him is a particular thing. But then one guy's a football lineman. And what he needs for his sport and his strength, a whole different thing. You know, and then one guy is a CrossFit guy, or one guy's a surfer, or one guy, you know, is a speed cyclist or whatever. There's so many different lifestyles that I think custom creation of your diet to support your athletic endeavors is a thing, along with your heredity and your blood type and your stress levels. Or, I mean, there's just, you know, did you have 8 kids running around? I mean, there's so many variables, you know. So the whole thing of there is no truth. But then again, we do know that there has to be a baseline truth somewhere, which I think is, we could agree that chemicals are bad. That could be generally said. Protein is necessary. Water, clean water, it's not really debatable. You know, there's just certain things that we could agree on that where there would be some baseline truth.
Sure. Yeah. I think, you know, as you hear, it's always truth seeking, right? And there's something to be said for hard data and hard evidence, but also hard data and hard evidence can be steered in a direction to reinforce a certain narrative. So you have to look at the studies with a degree of skepticism always, and, you know, take a first principles approach and question your assumptions, right? And you know, try to be as impartial and objective as you possibly can.
Which is a journey itself,
Yes,
right?
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And the other thing is you need to look at who's sponsoring the studies.
Oh,
Right?
I always
You
talk
need to
about
follow
that.
you
Oh
need
my
to look
God.
at what's the incentive
Yeah,
structure and like
Yeah,
you
of
got to
course.
look at those things.
It is. I agree. That's something I always mention. People bring up studies. It's just subjective. Typically, it can be subjective upon who funded the study.
Or it can be entirely manipulated.
And
Absolutely.
it can be manipulated
Yeah.
for some sort of
Yeah.
capital gain
Sure.
somewhere. Manipulating people's minds to think one way to buy this product or that product
Yeah.
or whatever. The cool thing about what we're doing is, I'm not selling you anything. I got no product to sell. I mean, there's no ulterior. It's a pure motivation of curious. All my life I've been curious about nutrition. I think it had a lot to do with my athletic endeavors. I always wanted to have a car that wants high octane fuel. Like I felt like on all these sports I was doing, I was using all this energy, and I wanted a leg up. I felt that nutrition was a way for me to have a little bit of an advance on my competitors, because back then, we're talking almost 50 years ago, it was sports nutrition science. It was the natural food industry was in its infancy. So I was there, curious, and to this day remain curious. And what I thought through all these phases of my life has totally gone through shifts, and it's been a fun journey, and it still is. And with that said, anything else, Dirk? Is there anything else you'd like to add to this episode today? I know you got a lot bubbling in there, mister.
Sure. So, and this is with all respect to anyone taking any sort of supplements, including you, Steve.
Yeah, I forgot to ask you about supplementation.
Yeah. So my own personal belief is that there is no part of our makeup, or part of our body, that requires pharmaceuticals or nutraceuticals. And so everything is found in nature. We are tied to the land. We are tied to this beautiful earth. There's no requirement for that. It's just
get your food, get your nutrition from your food.
I get no headaches. The pain in any joints, any
Gone.
of my joints are gone. And I just I believe that it's not that nutraceuticals and pharmaceuticals are not hurtful or have slight benefit or slight disbenefit. I do believe that they can actually have great disbenefit. The
Okay.
pharmaceuticals, just the processing of the chemicals in our gastrointestinal tract, I don't see how that can be good for us.
Right.
This is just my own belief.
Yeah, but those are valid. I think that's a valid belief, Awesome. Stoked for you to bring that out. I think we're about time to wrap this up.
Right
So
on.
I want to thank you guys, Rob, Steve, and Dirk, for coming today. Super stoked.
Thank you for having us.
And this is Joseph Allison on What is the Truth for Twin Palms Entertainment.